Yeah, yeah, whatever you ask, I will answer.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. So let me bring you in real quick. All right, welcome back to Film News. This week, we have one of the most hardworking, hard-charging, creative director, writer, hustler out there right now. CJ, if you don't mind, kind of giving us a little bit of who you are, how you got here, brother.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for having me on, David, and appreciate the kind words. The short trip down this lane, which people that follow me already know, I've been doing this for about 12 years. Um, I've made 4 featured films to this point. My 5th one's in post production right now. It'll be coming out next year. And yeah, man, I just been rocking and rolling. My first film I made for like $1,000 with friends and family, and wasn't the best in the world. That's sort of more of my film school, basically.
Yeah.
I didn't go to film school. I just learned on my own, and didn't do a short film. Just jumped in. So did that. After I made that film, I really enjoyed the process and loved making it, and haven't looked back since. I feel like every year, well, probably about every 2 to 3 years, I have a new film that comes out. That seems to be my average. Because as you were saying earlier, I do wear a lot of hats. I write my scripts, I direct, I cast, I produce, I edit, and even for the Sherlock film, I did cinematography on that one. So I did
Yeah.
a lot of work, but I enjoy all those processes. So for me, although it can be taxing at times and exhausting, I do enjoy the process and doing all those. So that's a little bit of me, man.
Awesome. Hey, so now you said you jumped in right into feature films. What made you choose? Because not a lot of people are going to be like, man, fuck it. My first film, I want to do a feature film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's a big undertaking to begin with. But then as your first film to be the feature film, you're like, fuck.
Um, I don't know, man. I think I've always been someone that tries to go for it all, and everything that I do. So I knew, like, if I was going to spend a lot of time making a film, whether it was a short or a feature, I just wanted to go for the feature.
Yeah.
That way I could use that potentially to make money on it. I knew it was going to be a huge taking on. There's probably a little bit of naiveness there. But I enjoy a great challenge. I get a question all the time, like, why do you keep doing period pieces and Roman movies and all these things? Because obviously that's very challenging and can get expensive.
Yeah.
Uh, but I just love the challenge. I knew it would be a big one, and I knew I'd learn a ton. I wasn't looking to win any Oscars on my first film. I wasn't that naive. Um, I just didn't want to do a short. I just wanted to do a feature and just jump in. So.
That's bad. Yeah. I think I recall, I kind of recall the first time we ever decided to do the day we decided to do our feature film, it was by sheer accident because it started as a student project short, and it was a couple of us, guys sitting around class. We're like, oh, dude, I know so and so, I know so and so, and we get on set and we have like 40 people standing around waiting to do this film, and I'm like, oh shit. And we got carried away, and so we're like, man, okay, we're sitting at 45 minutes, all right, sitting at 58 minutes, all right, cool, yeah, I think we got a feature film. So
Right.
yeah, for us it was by sheer accident. Now you mentioned something about doing period pieces, because I know when I first met you, you had just finished Eyes of a Roman,
Mhm.
and when you were talking to me about it, and I don't know if you remember this, um one of the first questions I asked you is, what in the hell were you thinking doing a Roman period piece in San Antonio or in Texas?
Yeah, yeah. I don't remember that. That's okay.
Yeah, no, like I said, you meet a lot of people, you do a lot of stuff, but in my mind, I remember that, and you gave me the best answer. It's like because I can. I was like, oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That sounds pretty accurate. That's definitely my message for everyone, man. I think a lot of people get stuck. I just did a talk the other day with Beyond the Canvas and Gabriel downtown,
Uh-huh.
and there's always the fear factor filmmakers have about the unknown. It's
Yep.
like sort of the what ifs on everything. Like, what if people don't like it? What if I don't get enough money? What if I don't get enough cast and crew? And it just stops people from being creative and doing what they want. So for me, yeah, I always wanted to do a Roman film. And, when people ask like what you did years ago, like it's because I can, and I wanted to, people get into like, well, does our land look like their land? I mean, kind of, without the cedar, but for that time period, we could kind of pull it off. And it was kind of during COVID, and so I was going to do an outdoor type film, anyways.
Yeah.
And for actors, they don't grow up. We love playing, characters and sword fighting, and so people ask me all the time, like, how'd you get like 120 extras? Well, who doesn't want to dress up like a barbarian or a gladiator and go out there and sword fight? Like that's what we enjoy doing if you're an actor. And so for me, finding those extras, it really wasn't too difficult, to be honest, because it's a film or a project you don't see too often in the
Yeah.
San Antonio area. And so it was so new for people that are in the acting world. They wanted to jump in and be a part of it. And so that's another thing I try to tell filmmakers, like, with cast and crew, like if you have a story or a script that's unique and different than something that's been done a lot, then you're going to get a lot of interest, and it was no different with the Sherlock film. I just enjoy doing tough creative work. I don't want to be a one-dimensional filmmaker where I just do like horror movies. Yeah, I really want to keep growing and do different things. And Eyes of Roman was a new challenge. Yeah, I learned a lot. Action period piece, slow motion, fight sequences. Those are all things I've never done before. And
Uh,
so I learned all that, right? And then now I can implement that into other movies. And I did do that with Sherlock. So
Now, you talk about casting extras because a lot of time you are right. Most of us as filmmakers have that, I guess, almost like the same gripe that when it comes to like finding extras or finding people to help us out is one of the hardest things to do. But I've noticed that, like yourself, you have really good success when it comes to getting people on board. Would you say that's either getting out there ahead of time and kind of beating feet and kind of shaking babies, kissing hands, and all that good stuff, or is it like just like you said earlier, right now, the fact that it's the novelty of the project?
I think it's definitely both. I tell filmmakers now, like, you kind of have to brand yourself, which filmmakers or director writers, they really don't like doing that very much. And I'm kind of right there. Like when I first started, that's not what I wanted to do. I just wanted to make movies. But if people don't know who you are, it's just like your film. Like when your film's done, if you don't know how to get it in front of people, no one's going to watch it. And so if people don't know who you are, they're not going to want to work with you. And so getting out there, networking, supporting other filmmakers within your community, which I try to do a lot of, definitely helps. And then just being present, on social media, which are free platforms for everybody to use. If you're a
Yeah.
filmmaker, you should be using that as much as you can to help promote who you are, but also your project. But you also have to just be a good person. You gotta, if you make promises, you need to keep those promises. I tell people all the time, like, don't over promise something and don't deliver, because people don't forget, they'll remember that. And so, for me, with the Sherlock film, before they even started, everyone that was coming on, you tell them what they're going to get and what they're not going to get. And if you're okay with that, I'd love to have you. And part of my promise was theatrical distribution, at least in Texas. And then I'm going to continue to try to push out of Texas. But I promised Texas. Obviously, I've done better than that. And then obviously they'll go on to streaming platforms when we're done touring. And so I've kept my promise. And so everyone that's been part of the film, they're getting what I told them they would get. And that goes a long ways, man. Like, sometimes that doesn't happen on other products, or productions. And I'm we're talking about ourselves here, but, I'm a serious filmmaker. But I'm easy to work with. I'm very chill, and, I like to bring on good people, good teams, but I hold people accountable. And to this point, all my lead and supporting actors, they've never left the project. They enjoy the material. And I think when they see me on day one, how hard I'm hustling and working and getting things done, they're like, okay, yeah, man, this guy means business. This is legit. And I think that's very important. You got to have a good team, a good cast and crew. And it doesn't mean they have to be super, super experienced, and with me, I actually have had a lot of first timers or second timers as my crew members, but I spend that time and effort training them, giving them opportunities where they wouldn't have got it anywhere else. And that goes a long ways too. So there's a lot of different formulas you can go, but for me, that's been a formula that's worked for me.
Yeah.
And, I hold myself to a certain standard, and, I want to be obviously a professional filmmaker that does everything the right way. And so I definitely strive for that every time I do a project, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and trying to make everybody happy, which is impossible, but I try.
Yeah.
Because it is a very long project. People are putting in tons of time, energy, passion, love, dedication for years. If you're doing a featured film, like, you got to be super committed. I tell people, if you're joining, like, don't just dip a toe in, man. You're going to have to jump all in, because this is what's coming. And I'll tell them everything. This is what's coming. This is what's going to happen. And if you don't think you can last 2 years, then don't join the project. It's okay. But that's my expectation when I speak to everyone.
Yeah.
I speak to everyone, extras, PAs, the leads, supporting, everybody that comes onto my film. I have a conversation with them, and they all get the same speech. So
that's awesome. I like the fact that you make it a point of communicating, because a lot of times, and I think I had this conversation or similar conversation with another filmmaker about the communication process and the importance of the communication process, not only between the director and the actor, but as you pointed out, the director, the crew, and even the extras, because sometimes they do make a difference. And them being there and being present makes that difference. So I think that's awesome. Now, with your recent project, which is a Sherlock Holmes, um, okay, well, go ahead, because I don't know really how to like pitch it correctly. So if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, it's an interesting one, but I would describe it as a psychological horror drama. That's kind of what it is. Like, there's a lot of, it's not just one genre. There's 2 or 3 built in there, and kind of what makes it a little bit unique and different. So.
And how long did this one take you to do?
I mean, we'll just start with the pre-production. So we did a short film first, which people can go on YouTube and watch if they want. It's just Sherlock Holmes, Mare in the Night short film.
Yeah.
That wasn't submitted to festivals, even though people thought I should have. I used it for crowdfunding purposes. And so we made that short. And then I want to say within 6 months, I did all the casting and crowdfunding. We started the filming process. And we went from April to November. So we filmed for a pretty long time. But we did take, I would say, at least 7 or 8 weeks off in between those months, especially in the summer. It's too hot.
Yeah.
The houses were built in 1901. There is no AC in these houses that we use. So we took some breaks in there. I think it's also important to know that people realize that I made 2 featured films during that 6-month span. So it wasn't just one. Eyes of a Roman I did in 3 months. And so that was pretty accurate. I think it takes about 3 months for me to make a feature. It's at least an hour and 40 to 2 hour minutes or long,
Yeah.
So 6 months there. And then, so that's already a year basically. And then for post-production, it took me about a year. Well, I would say about 8 to 9 months of editing. And then I gave it to my composer to do the music, and that took him about 3 or 4 months. So, it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 years from writing, getting money, casting, pre-filming, post. So I would say about 2.5 years, I guess it took total.
Now, this is something that we were kind of touching on, or that I told you I'd like to touch on before we started, was the business side of the house. Because, and this, like I had told you, this I think is an area where, one, you've excelled at, and it's kind of a model that I wish more of us would kind of follow, because a lot of times we don't think of the business side of the house. We want to be the creatives, we want to be, the directors, but we never want to wear the hat of marketing or getting distributor or anything like that. We just want to be like, I want to film it, then I want somebody else to do everything for me. But we're independent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I won't say every, but the majority of artists are kind of like that. Like I would love to do that too. I just know that the business side is almost, unfortunately, more important than actually making the film itself, which is crazy to say, but if you can't market and promote and find a way to get your film out there for people to watch and pay you to watch it, then really all you're doing, if you're a filmmaker and you don't do that part of it, it's just a hobby. It's not really a career if you're the filmmaker.
Yeah.
Now, it's different for pieces, actors, cinematographers, editors. A lot of them get paid for certain projects, and they can do like 4 to 6 different films a year. But if you're the writer, director, and it's your baby and you're doing all the work and all that stuff, well, that's how you make money. And so you got to make sure you have that business side of it on the back end, where you do know how to distribute your movie. And a lot goes into it. I think on the budgeting side, a lot of people forget that you need money to market and promote. And so I'm trying to tell filmmakers, like, look, if your budget to make the movie is, let's just say $50,000, well, then you're going to need at least $500,000 to market and promote your film. And they're like, well, that's crazy. I'm like, it is. But if you want people to see your movie and be able to promote, that's kind of what it takes. And I'm not saying that I've perfected that myself, because that's a lot of money and it's hard to do that. But you can find other avenues. So for me, knowing we don't have much money, it's just targeting your audience for your certain cities, obviously using social media. One thing that I've been telling filmmakers is there are a lot of universities in the US that teach film. And so you need to be contacting these universities and talk with the director. And if you're able to find cities or towns with theaters right next to these universities, well, then you already have sort of a built-in audience. You go and talk to the students. Those 100 students go and watch your movie the next day.
Yeah.
That's a really good formula, but it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of phone calls and emails, and a lot of people don't like doing that because they just want to go do the creative side. But that's kind of what it is, man. And then when it comes to the actual theatrical side, people are definitely interested. Like, how did you get your movie in the theaters? It's like, well, it's really a lot of the same. It's really just calling and emailing the actual theater itself. They all have contact information on their pages, and you just reach out. Some people use booking agencies. I used a booking agency on the Santico theaters in San Antonio, only because they found me. They reached out to me. I went through city-based cinemas, which most filmmakers in San Antonio know. Brad's very nice, and he gives 100% of ticket sales to the filmmaker, which doesn't happen.
No, no, it does not.
That's the only place that I know of that does that. So kudos to Brad for really helping out indie films. And for Sherlock, the formula is basically Brad's like, look, if you can sell out, I'll get you another screen. Cool. Well, you let everybody know, like, hey, man, on this day, we're going to get launched. So everyone needs to buy. And so I sold out in 24 hours, gave us another one, sold out again in another 24 hours. So basically in 2 days, I sold about 300 tickets. So then he gave me the weekend. Once I got the weekend, that's caught the eye of the booking agency for Santico's theaters, because that same booking agency works with Brad at CityBase.
Yeah.
So they reached out and they wanted to do Santico's. I said, that's fine. And so we did Palladium and Casablanca. Now here's the difference. With the booking agency and working with Santico's, I only got 35% of the ticket sales. So that's a huge drop off, right? Yeah. The booking agency probably got 15%. All the other theaters that I've been to in Texas, out of state, whether I was in Omaha or Chicago or Tulsa, wherever I was, those sales are all set up with the 50-50 ticket split. And that's sort of the norm for indie filmmakers. Theaters are okay doing that. Yeah. I recommend not trying to be greedy and doing trying to do 80-20 or 70-30, type stuff. Just do 50-50 and you should be good. Now, it's not as easy as it sounds. I would say for every theater I got, it took about, probably one out of every 12 to 15 theaters I reached out to said yes, or got back to me. A lot of times they don't even respond. A lot of them. I recommend trying to find art houses, smaller theaters, not big chains like AMC. They're not even going to waste their time, with you. And I think it's important for people to understand that I'm not paying the theaters anything. I'm not paying them. So if you're a filmmaker, I recommend not doing that. They will do a ticket split with you. You just have to find the right theater. Yeah. And, Monday through Thursday is probably going to be your window for most of these theaters. Theaters are dead, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So they're like, yeah, if you're able to bring in even 20 or 30 people, they're happy because they're going to make some money. Weekends can be tough, but if you're in your local city like San Antonio, with CityBase, I got the weekend because I proved I could do it. And then with Santico's, I got a weekend also. But because people were showing up watching the film, and not just family and friends, like strangers and audiences were finding the movie, it ran for 2 weeks. So they just kept running it because it was making money. And that's really all theaters care about, guys. Like, we hear distribution companies say, don't do dramas, don't do this. It needs to be either a sci-fi or horror,
Yeah,
or no,
always thick.
or no one's going to take it. I'm saying that's BS, because theaters don't watch your film. I would talk to these theaters and be like, hey, do you want to see my movie? No, we don't need to see your movie. Okay. Like, they don't care. Like, they really just care about filling the seats.
Yeah.
And so if you have a way to tell them, like, look, we've been doing well. That's why I always say start in your city, because that's going to be your best draw. And then you can show numbers. I was able to show these theaters, like, look, I 300 seats in one night, and then throughout the weekend, we sold probably 70 or 80% of seats at City Base. And so that's really nice to show theaters, gets them excited. And so that helped with my selling process of getting into theaters. So,
See, that's awesome, because a lot of times, to include myself, I skip the whole theater process. I've had my screenings at a theater. Like most people, I'll pay for the screening, whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll pay for the time, and then I'll sell the tickets and recoup my cost. But I never think of, like, okay, can I hustle to do a theatrical run? Because to me, it's like, man, that's out of my league. So I go straight into distribution, and that's where I fight my battles. Like, okay, cool. Who is going to give me the best distribution deal? I'm like, okay, are we going to go with a 50-50? Are we going to go with that 80-20, 20 of course going to the filmmaker? Because most of the time distributors, that's they're going to get their money first. But yeah, as far as like hearing your process for theatrical, is not much difference. It's a little bit. Oh, actually, it's a lot more hustle of you going out there, but it's not any different than most of us finding that distributor to pick up our film. Because, like you said, most of the time they're like, "Oh, it's not a horror, it's not sci-fi, it doesn't have boobs, blood, or guts, and I don't want it." I mean,
yeah.
that's the old mentality for distributors. But I like the fact that you're saying, "Yeah, no, man, that theaters, all they care about is, can you put butts in seats, and if
Yep.
you can prove it, then let's do it."
They really do not care. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, man. Like, none of the theaters watched my film.
Yeah.
They had no idea what they were fixing to show, which is mind blowing to me when I first started finding all this stuff out. And when you reach out to theaters, they don't do contracts. I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, yeah, they don't do contracts. It's all just through email.
Yeah.
And so when I was first starting off, like, this can't be right. I feel like I'm getting scammed. Like, there's no way this is just true. And talking with the booking agency, I asked them the same question. It's like, no, that's how it's done. The only ones that may get contracts are the big dogs, Disney, Universal, Paramount. But if you're a lower scale, like all indie filmmakers, it's just done through email. And they do like ACH or a check, normally 30 days after your film is done running. And you just give them the banking information when you're doing the processing stuff. And then in 30 days, they send you your money. I mean, it's pretty wild, man. And I think something that people need to realize is, like, Hollywood, I guess, if you want to call it Hollywood, but just the theatrical system, they're hurting. Like, they're in a scramble right now. Like, behind the scenes, it's sort of chaotic. And they need material. And so let's not get it wrong here. Like, your film has to be a decent product.
Yeah.
The audio needs to be good, video, and the story needs to be at least okay. It's got to pass QC, quality control.
I was going to ask you about the deliverables in a minute here, but I'm glad you jumped on it already.
Yeah, so that's part of it. You got to pass QC, and then you need to get your film DCP'd. And for the audience that doesn't know what that is, it's digital cinema package, which can cost anywhere from like $800 to $1,200, depending on who you go with. I went with Cube Cinema, and I haven't had any issues. They did the DCP for me. It sounds and looks great. And they're also a company that can send your film to all these theaters, which some DCP companies don't do that. So I recommend not working with them. Work with the company that has that power, that can send your film to any theater that you want. And they can. And so that's a huge help for me, because I can just email them, like my contact, her name is Brittany. So I'm like, hey, Brittany, I'm going to be showing it in Tulsa and Chicago. I just got the contract. Can you send this tomorrow? Sure, CJ, no problem. I'll send it tomorrow and send you the tracking. And it's really that simple. Once you get in, the partnership with that DCP company. And so now I have them forever. And so I'll be using them again on my future films. And I already have my contact. And it's going to be very simple for me, not having to worry if my film's going to get to the theater or not. So
that's I'm amazed how, I guess because I've been through the process of getting into theater and going through the DCP. It took us, man, when I had mine done, I think the first time we got it back, the audio was messed up. But because when we delivered it, the stem, one of the audio stems, and again, for those of you who don't know what a stem is, normally they ask you to deliver a stem for just your vocals, a stem for the music, and a stem for any kind of special effects. So one of my audios for the vocals was not set at a certain, like you were saying, it didn't pass quality control, basically because the loudness wasn't matching through and through. There was a couple drop offs, and so they're like, "Hey, you had to fix this." And so we went. It took us a lot longer than what it was, but it was a learning process for me because I had never been through the theater. Well, not release, because we didn't do a release like yourself. It was just I used the theater to do my premiere, and they requested a DCP, and that was my first time doing DCP deliverable. And it was so interesting because I learned so much of having sure that you do the back end work before you even think of sending out your deliverables. They're a lot stringent, more than most. I want to say most distribution companies, because I've been through both self distribution and Hollywood distribution. And yeah, Hollywood kind of like, okay, well, we'll fix it, but it's gonna come out of your pocket at the back end. And you're like, whoa, shit, you're already taking 80%. How much more are you gonna charge me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, distribution companies. Well, talking about the DCP, I think it's important that you have a good, well, my composer, he was the one that helped layer my audio for 5.1 before you send it to DCP. So it's basically like 6 channels.
Yeah.
And you're basically putting, left, center, right, center, all that stuff, and you send it to them. And for people who don't realize what that is, basically once your film gets there in the theater, the DCP is telling the audio which speaker to go to. So for surround sound, if you got a thunderstorm coming from behind you, you hear it there on this side and not over here in the left front. That's kind of what it does. And anyways, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
I think for filmmakers that have no idea what DCP is or how to do surround sound, you need to get a professional.
Yeah.
Pay that money. It's going to cost, $1,200 at least. So just put that in your budget, get someone that you can trust that knows what they're doing, and you'll be fine. As far as the distribution companies go, the only distribution company that I have ever gone with to this point is Film Hub, where they give 80% of whatever it makes on streaming to you, and they take 20%. Now, I think it's important to understand the channel that your movie's on, they're going to take their cut first.
Yeah.
So whatever that cut is now going to Film Hub, that's the 80% you're getting. And that's the gray area that you don't know. So even with Film Hub, there's still some gray area there, which kind of sucks. But to this point, that's really been the only distribution company that I have found that's been transparent. They pay me every quarter, and they're getting better channels now. Like when I put Eyes of Roman on there, like Tubi and Amazon were sort of their biggest ones. Now they got HBO and Hulu and Showtime and Netflix. They got bigger channels. Now, I think it's important for people to understand to get onto those big channels. You need error and omission insurance. Those big channels, they won't touch it unless you have that. And that's a whole nother thing. People can look that up and Google it if you don't know what we're talking about. But to put your movie on Film Hub, you don't have to have error and omissions insurance.
Yeah.
They'll still take it, but you're probably only going to make it to Tubi and Amazon. They're not going to, you won't even qualify to get on those bigger channels. And so if that's your goal, you got to make sure you have that. People are like, well, how much does that cost? I was like, well, normally it's like 1 to 3% of what your budget is, but it kind of depends on what you're making. So I think the minimum I've seen is maybe like $3,000 to $4,000. But it can definitely get expensive depending on what project you're doing. But that's just another thing that filmmakers don't know about, or they skip over and they still think they're going to make it to Netflix or HBO or whatever. And it's like, well, you don't even have the proper, qualifications, so you've already set yourself up for failure there, my friend. You know what I mean? So now, do you need E&O for insurance for theatrical release? If you're doing self-distribution like I've been doing, you don't need it. If you get a distribution company to do it for you, they're going to probably want that, but keep in mind, like the distribution company, the E&O, just for people to know, that protects your film from you being sued by somebody, basically. And just look it up. There's a lot that goes into that insurance. But the distribution companies, the theaters, that doesn't affect them. So if your film if someone tries to sue you for your film for whatever reason, that doesn't hurt them at all. So they don't really care. That's none of their business. That's your business.
and I think, again, circling back to what how we started this conversation, is the business of filmmaking, especially for independent guys. And I'm so happy that you're out there teaching and kind of having talks with people about this aspect of filmmaking. Because again, a lot of times we don't really sit down. I mean, even when I went to school, because I did go to school, we weren't taught the business of filmmaking. We were taught, filmmaking as the business, not the business of it. And it's, I think, very not disheartening, but I think it takes away from the success of an independent guy, because we go in there with these high hopes and glitter and yes, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna get on Netflix. But no, dude, to get on Netflix, man, that's a whole nother animal. Back in the day, they wouldn't even look at you unless you had an agent, and then to pass their QC, you had to have certain cameras, certain audio, certain specs that they had, which were more stringent than anybody else. I think they've gotten a little bit better, but even then, I mean, it's getting worse. Amazon, they shut down their studio process. And we only get, I don't know if you track that. I think we're down to like 6 cents an hour watched per whatever they're making. So yeah, like you said, I'm getting, or if you go through Film Hub, you get 80% of 6 cents. I don't know the math for that, but
yeah, I think that might be what, 3 or 4 cents. I don't know, but yeah, it's brutal, man. I think that's another reason why I tell filmmakers to really look at the theatrical side. We touched on it earlier with city-based cinemas, 100% ticket sales. Well, that weekend, after the cut on taxes and stuff, I want to say the film made just over $5,000 in 3 days. where Eyes of a Roman, that's been on streaming for 3 years, that might be as much that it's made, anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000, because they just take a lot, which is insane, because people are like, well, you got over 800,000 views just on YouTube Stash. I'm like, I do, but it's only paid me maybe $1,200, which is not much, So if I'm getting 200 from them, who knows how much they're making, probably $50,000 to $100,000 on my movie, and we're getting pennies, and so I don't like that, no filmmaker does. And so when you do self-distribution in the theatrical world, you're getting a 50-50 ticket split. And so there's nothing hidden. At least what you're getting.
Yeah.
And, I'd rather fight for myself and die on my own sword than just hand my movie off to strangers and hope that they're good people and they pay me what I deserve, because 99% of distribution companies don't do that. But if you do go with a distribution company, do your due diligence, go onto IMDb Pro, see who they worked with, reach out to those filmmakers, see if they're getting paid correctly, and then when you get the contract, get a legal entertainment lawyer involved and have them look it over. Spend that money for them to protect you and your movie. I've seen too many filmmakers get screwed over. They lose their film, and now they can't even sell it. They can't sell DVDs. They can't do anything because in their contract it says they basically own the rights for 10 years, and so now you're stuck. They don't pay you anything, and it's brutal, man. And so I just tell filmmakers, be careful. Don't be so quick to give your film away. Every distribution company are going to say they love your movie, they love who you are, it's a great film. They're going to feed you smoke, because to them it's just another movie they can put in their catalog and ship it off and maybe make $20,000 or $30,000 on your movie, even if your movie isn't the best. There's a lot of pretty weak storytelling, bad acting, cheesy type films out there in the indie world, but they are still making $30,000 or $40,000 off of your film. You just don't realize it, and it's unfortunate. To this point, the only way I know how to battle that is to self-distribute in the theaters. I haven't run into anything. You don't need a sales agent to do that. You don't need a booking company to do that. You can do it yourself, as long as you have the discipline to do it. And I think that's where a lot of filmmakers fail, because it's hard work, and they don't have that discipline to sit there every day and email and follow up and book these theaters. They want to go create. Well, that's great, man. But if that's all you want to do and you're making your own films, it's probably just going to be a hobby. You have to set aside that business side of it too, or at least build up a team that can help you do that. With Sherlock, I had, I'd say 3 people, including myself, which would be 4, emailing and doing phone calls. It wasn't just me. I had 3 people that were willing to help and do this. So if everyone's kind of doing it part-time, once or twice a week, well, then you really are hitting 7 days a week, because we're all doing it a little bit different. And then we just copied each other on all the emails, and we worked together as a team, and that definitely helps. So find a few good people that are willing to be all in and help you, and go for it.
Yeah, because so far you've had good luck with getting it distributed outside of Texas. I know recently you just posted you're in New Mexico next.
Yep. Yeah, we'll be in Albuquerque, I think for 2 days. I think it's 2 or 3 different showings. Yeah.
Okay. And this is all, again, due to the team's effort of continuously hustling to make sure that the film gets out there to those theaters, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's just, I think the film tour, which is sort of like the Midwest, I guess, we're going to be taking a break, but we may end up reamping again, like in the fall, and maybe going to the East Coast or, something like that. So the New Mexico one will probably be the last one for a little bit. But that's the beauty about self-distribution and not giving your movie to a company. You could literally tour your film forever if that's what you wanted to do. Like you can go at your own pace. That's what's cool also. I think sometimes filmmakers think like, well, you got to release it all at once, this weekend and as many theaters as I can.
Yeah.
I was like, well, unless you got like a $10 million marketing and promoting budget, I would not do that because no one's going to know that your film's even there. How are you going to promote and get people to go watch? I much rather start in your home city or town, build up your audience there, and then slowly crawl to different cities within your state and just continue to build on the momentum and hopefully word of mouth. If your film is good and you're getting good reviews and people start talking about it, that helps also. Right now Sherlock is doing pretty well. It's Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb we're above 90% right now.
Oh wow,
which is
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's great. Will it always stay like that? Probably not, but right now that's where it's at, and so that helps too. And that's kind of what I mean. Like you don't have to sprint. A lot of filmmakers do because they want to move on to the next project because we're creatives. We want to create.
Yeah.
And I do too, man. Don't get me wrong. It drives me nuts that I can't go out there and just make but I'm editing part 2 right now, so that's my focus. And I won't probably be able to start another film for at least 1 or 2 years, which is tough. But that's why I tell filmmakers, like, whatever you make sure you're making what you want to do and what you want to see, because if you're serious about this, you're going to be spending at least 3 years of your life making this one movie. That's the brutality of being a writer, director, filmmaker that produces your own work. If you're working on other films and different, job titles, you can do 4 or 6 films a year, but I can't. That's why I've made 4 featured films, because it takes 2 or 3 years to make one.
Yeah. So. Now I had a question for you, because you said you're sitting at 90%. How you, as a filmmaker, not the businessman, the filmmaker now, deal with those ones and twos, that 10% that go on there, the keyboard rangers, and they sit there, they type out these big old long essays like how crappy your film was because the lighting wasn't true to period, and the clothing was not right, and their accents wasn't on par with the English accent or whatever, and they just tear you a new one like if you were this big Hollywood movie. How do you deal with that?
It bounces off me, man. Like it really does not bother me. I tell filmmakers, this is part of the gig. Not everyone's going to like your movie. There'll be people that love it. There's going to be people that hate it. And you just need to make what you need to make. So for like, the personal side and the emotional side of things, it really doesn't bother me. And I know people are like, yeah, right. No, it really doesn't. Because if it does, that could stop you from making more work.
Yeah.
Or getting into these heated debates with strangers you don't even know who they are. Like, what's the purpose? Like, why? Like, you're just feeding their fuel. That's what they want. And so it doesn't bother me. People ask, like, well, do you read the reviews? I'm like, yeah, I do. I read them because I want to see the good and the bad. And some of the bad ones, they actually have some valid points sometimes. And so I will absorb that. For Eyes of a Roman, I remember one of the critiques was they wanted more character development. And I'm like, well, they're not wrong.
Yeah.
And so I took that to heart. So for the Sherlock film, I did better on character development. And that's what I mean. I think there's obviously some on there that are pretty bad, that are just trolls or people just being mean or rude. But then there are some on there that actually take the time to explain why they gave you a low score. And I think it's important for filmmakers to actually try to listen and absorb and see what they're trying to tell you. And they're not always right. Sometimes they are, though. And I think, if my film's sitting at, I think 93% right now on Rotten Tomatoes, I'm not going to focus on the couple of ones that we've gotten. Look how many people really loved and enjoyed the film that we made. That's awesome. And again, I already know going in, it's normally going to be a 50-50 split no matter what you make. And so being above 90% right now, it's amazing. That means I brought more of the negative people to my side, with this movie. So I'm happy, man. I'm happy. Now, if I make a film when, my scores are like 5 or 10%, yeah, I mean, that would be tough, but it's like, why? Like, what happened? What did we miss? And I would use that in study and learn. Is it the technical side? Does it look too much like a high school indie film? What's the reason?
Yeah.
And so I just use it as learning experiences, to be honest. And some of them I laugh at and I get a kick at. I think one of them on Eyes of Roman, they're like, I'm not sure about the film, but I would love to know what the lead actor uses for his hair products. Which they're talking about me. If you've seen Eyes of a Roman, I have these slow motion shots where my hair is just like flying everywhere. And I thought that was pretty funny. And so,
that is classic. I love that. I get that on a t-shirt where as director for the next film is like
yeah, I would just filmmakers they have to understand that that's going to be part of it. And it's like that for the actors too, right? Like, it's just part of it, guys. Like, just don't let it stop you. Don't let it bother you. I know there's some people out there that just want to just hate the hate, and they'll just troll you no matter what.
Yeah.
Maybe they're jaded or jealous or envious of what you're able to do, and they haven't made a film at all, and that's what they want to do. And they're like, well, if I can't do it, F this guy, I'm going to give him a 1 and just trash his movie. I think one of the reviews was like, they trashed it, and they said something like, they don't like horror films, and they went on all this charade. But then at the end, they're like, I decided to leave and go watch The Wolfman instead. I'm like, well, that's a horror film, man. Like,
yeah.
So what do you like? Just stuff like that. And so when you see people like that, they're just trolling. That's another part of it, unfortunately, in the industry. I'd like to think that filmmakers and actors and people within your own community would never try to sabotage another filmmaker. And I hope that's never happened to me. But I know it does happen, which is not a good thing. And for filmmakers that do that, that's not good. And those are the ones that I would not affiliate myself with or work with if those are the type of people that they are. Making a film is extremely hard to do. 3 years of my life, man, every day working on it in some form or fashion. So you need to respect it. You may not like the film itself for what it is, but you do need to appreciate the cast and crew that worked on it for that extended period of time. They put a lot of heart, love, and dedication into the movie. And so I've seen a lot of films that me personally, I didn't enjoy, but I can respect what they were trying to do,
Yeah.
and appreciate what they put into the product, because it's extremely hard and difficult. So anyone that's never really made a film, they don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's like other professions are the same, right?
Yeah.
It's like people like, oh, I could be a doctor. Could you, man? Like they go to school for like 12 years. Like, what are you talking about? Like, don't disrespect the ones that are really doing it. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I can go on a whole thing about that, but I think sometimes people just need to take a breath and be appreciative of what they're able to accomplish, and leave it at that, you know?
No, I get you. I get you definitely. And I asked you that question because a lot of times, and it took me a minute to learn the process because I was like we were talking about. I was in the creative side of the house where everything was like, oh, so passion, so this and that. And the first film I did, of course, it was a cheesy film, and I hadn't stepped back away from it yet to where I realized what I had. Now I know it's a cheesy, dumb
Yeah.
film. I'm one of those guys that like, oh, it's out there. My distributor contacted me and he bought it, and I was like, "Are you sure you want this little crappy movie?" He's like, "Yeah, dude." And lo and behold, yeah, I became part of a catalog that they sold off, and I'm one in like 300 that they're selling at the same time. But hey, it got me out there. But yeah, I took it to heart the first time I got a really hard like awakening as far as like review, and I was like, oh man. I'm like, wait a minute, but this guy doesn't even know me. I don't even know who he is, whatever. But yeah, it took a minute before I kind of came to terms like, hey, dude, again, you're not gonna please everybody. You know what I mean? Even though
100%.
even though like you said, they blew smoke up my butt. My distributor's like, oh dude, yeah, man, I watched film. I loved it, and this, that. And I bit into it, it was my first film. So I bit into that whole pitch. Now I know better, and I'm like, dude, come on. Let's make money. Let's talk about that. Forget about the whole blowing smoke up my butt. I already know the process.
Yeah, I think filmmakers need to definitely be humbled, and with the process, and understand that. Yeah, I always just keep bringing it up, man. Like, you can make Titanic, and there'll still be people out there that don't like it.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. So just make what you want to make, and if you're happy with the end product, then you succeeded. That's really all that truly matters, is if you're making it, it's your baby. If you're happy with it, then you succeeded. If you're done with the movie and there's a lot of points where you're like, I'm not really happy with that or that or that or that, well, then you didn't succeed what you were wanting to do when you took off on this journey.
Yeah.
And that's all internal and personal stuff. There's things on Sherlock Holmes where I watched the film that I'm not happy with. It's a disease for filmmakers, I think, where I'm always striving for perfection, and I think a lot of artists do, but I don't know if that's even attainable. So there could be a moment where you think you have the perfect film, and you're watching and you're like, I messed up on that lighting for 2 seconds in the movie.
Yeah.
And those things bug us, whereas the audience, a lot of times they don't even know, they don't even realize. If you go and look at the reviews for Sherlock, a lot of it, they love the way it looks and how it was shot, and they've given me a lot of love on the cinematography, which is awesome. I'm happy for that. But there's a lot of moments in the movie where I'm like, oh man, I kind of missed on that. Like, the lighting right there could have been better, stuff like that. And that's what I mean. Like, we're much harder on ourselves than I think any outside voice could be. And that's why those negatives don't really affect me. They just kind of bounce off me, because I'm like, I don't know, man. A lot of times what they say, it has nothing to do with the film. They just say something really short, and you're like, well, that was crap. It's like, well, sorry you didn't like it, but I appreciate your money, for buying it.
I think I love one that's like, oh, dude, I bought the DVD. It's crap. I threw it away. I'm like, huh? You actually spent $20 on the DVD? Wow, that's bad.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't care that he threw it away, whatever. I was like, huh? You actually bought the DVD? That's badass.
Yeah, it's like they feel like we don't set off in the beginning trying to make the best film possible. Yeah, I believe most filmmakers do. I'm definitely one of them. And we're just not going to meet everyone's expectations. And I tell other filmmakers too. I'm like, well, surely you've seen a film or a TV show or a series that disappointed you or you didn't enjoy as much. Well, yeah. I'm like, okay, man, it's the same thing. We all have opinions. Everything's subjective.
Yep.
And I just keep going back to it. Just make what you want to make. And if you're happy with it, you succeeded. So,
It's like watching Lost. I was on there for however many seasons, and that last season he just didn't deliver. I was like, oh. Anyways, that's that's not here nor there.
Game of Thrones, people were pretty upset about
Yeah,
that, you know.
yeah. So many years invested in it, and then just to end it like that. Yeah, I mean, and they're $1 billion movies. We're not $1 billion movies. We're like $100,000 movies. Um, Last question for you, real quick. That way, I
Sure.
don't take up too much of your time. You said you didn't have a formal education. Would you recommend filmmakers to jump in and learning on the job, or is that one of like, well, if you have the ability to, then go right ahead, do it?
Um, I don't think there's a wrong answer. Yeah, I think it really just comes down to what they're comfortable with. Some people need that comfort of going to a school and learning that way. Some people are comfortable just jumping in and learning that way. You know, I do know for most film schools, of what I've been told, they don't teach, the business side of it. It's more just like how to run a camera, how to write a
Yeah.
script, how to edit, which are all things you can learn on your own now. It's definitely with Google tutorials and just picking up a camera and learning on your own.
Yep.
Christopher Nolan, Tarantino, like they all learned on their own. They didn't go to film school, you know what I mean? So those are some of the best filmmakers ever, at least successfully at the box office, right? So
Yep.
it's really just pick what you're comfortable with. You know, that's what I would say. I think if you're a filmmaker, like where you write and you're going to make your own movie and direct, if you're spending $100,000 to go to film school, well, that could have been your budget to make your first featured film. So I think it's, just figure out what you want. But I don't think there's really a wrong answer. Like I said, I think some people may need that film school. Some people could just probably jump on a few projects and learn that way. Or you can do both. So there's not a wrong answer for me. I just went the path of no film school and just learning on my own.
Yeah.
I want to have my own techniques. I know in film school they try to teach you the basic 101 type filming techniques, and I don't do that. I create what I want to create. If I think the shot looks best this way, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to follow some filmmaking 101 book that you have to do because that's what Hollywood does in every single movie.
No.
Like, no, I like how this looks, so I'm going to do that. And I think that's another thing that's important for filmmakers. Like, you need to find sort of your own style and how you like to make things. I wouldn't try to copy too much. Obviously, you need to learn. So watching film, you're learning how to tell stories with your camera, with lighting, with music. That's how I learned. But then when you're out there on set, I mean, you're kind of doing what you want to do, just to tell the best story possible. People that work with me, they're like, do you have a storyboard? I'm like, nope, no storyboard. Because it's my film. Like, I know what I want. I also edit my own movies. And so doing the cinematography on Sherlock, I'd show up to set. I may have maybe like 4 or 5 shots that I definitely want to get that I wrote down. and the rest of it is basically in the moment. Just me finding a way to tell the story the best way, doing the blocking early with the actors to see what they want to do. And then once I know what they want to do, that's how I set up the scenes around the actors. And then I get what I want. But everyone's different. There's no like wrong or right way, in my opinion, to make a film. Some directors like Wes Anderson, they have a specific way they do things. Every frame is like perfectly centered, the lighting, the colors, all that stuff. And then you go watch like Zack Snyder or Michael Bay, and it's a lot of Michael Bay, a lot of in and out focus, action sequences, chaos, handheld camera. That's what I mean. Like everyone's different, man. And I think some filmmakers get stuck in their own mind where they want to be greatness. They want to be like Spielberg or Christopher Nolan, and they like, I have to do it like this. I have to do it like this. I'm like, why? You don't have to do it like that. You do whatever you want.
Yeah.
What do you want? Stop trying to make a film that you think the audience is going to like. Instead, make a film that you are going to like. And then the audience will find you. They will find your style. They'll find what you enjoy. Think about all the greats: Spielberg, M. Night Shyamalan, Nolan, Tarantino, Anderson. Like, they're all different. They all have different styles. So find your style, and the audiences will find you, man.
Awesome. Well, I do thank you, CJ. And let's take a little bit of time for you to kind of give us, if we're trying to look for you, find your films, where can we find you and your films?
Sure. The best way just to kind of follow me is really just Facebook. That's my main place. I'm on Instagram as well. You can Google me. A lot of stuff pops up as far as interviews and podcasts. YouTube channel, CJ Goodwin Productions. That's probably about it. As far as my films, GH5 was my first one. You can't find that anywhere because I don't want to put it out. So very limited people have seen that one. My second film, Jackson, it was on Amazon Prime Video back in the day, but it got taken down years and years and years ago. But I'm actually in the process of actually probably going to try to re-release that through Film Hub, hopefully sometime this year. Yeah. So there's going to be a chance for people to watch probably my film Jackson, like on Tubi and Amazon and these smaller places, probably by the end of the year. Eyes of a Roman, that's in a lot of places, Tubi, Amazon, Plex, YouTube, Stash, and then Sherlock Holmes. Right now, you can only watch it in theaters. My theater run's not done. Right now, I'm working on trying to get worldwide theatrical distribution for Sherlock. So I can show it in England and Ireland, all these places. So we'll see how far I can take this. But it's going to be in theaters for a while. Now, of course, once it's done, it'll hit streaming. It'll be all on all the normal lower type streaming channels, but I'm also working on trying to get it on a little bit better streaming channels like Paramount Plus or Peacock, possibly even Netflix or Hulu. I mean, we'll see. It really just depends if I can find the right people to help me get it to that level. So
nice. Awesome. So any personal shout outs, thank yous, or anything like that?
Yeah, I could thank a lot of people, but I want to thank just really the film community. I had a lot of people from the SA community come out, see my film, help spread the word, which means a lot. Definitely helps filmmakers when other filmmakers do that, and so that's really nice. I want to thank my cast and crew. The Sherlock cast and crew, they've done a lot of work. They've helped spread the word, social media, word of mouth. I have a few people behind the scenes that have been really with me from almost day one. So Kayla Rich, she was my first AD. And then after we were done, she helped me out on the business side a lot. We were partnered up a lot with the film, and we had, I don't know, hundreds of phone calls and discussions and pivoting and going here and just a lot of talks. Les Best, who plays Sherlock Holmes, and he's been in all my films. Same thing. I tell filmmakers, make sure you have at least one or two people you can always call, you can trust, you can have open conversations with them, you can vent, you can celebrate, you can cry, like whatever you need to do, you need those people. If you're holding it all in by yourself, and you're not able to express to anybody what's going on, that's tough. And for me, it was Les and Kayla for Sherlock. Every film's different. After the Sherlock world's over, we'll see who jumps on that train. I think people like, how can I work with you?
Yeah.
I was like, well, just keep following me. One day a cast and crew thing will pop up on my social, and my next film will be on its way and rolling. I always say people are more than welcome to reach out to me. Facebook Messenger is probably the easiest way. And I'm happy to speak with people or point them in the right direction. As you know, David, like I'm pretty connected in the community now. So I know a lot of other filmmakers and producers. So even though they may not be able to work on one of my films because I'm not doing anything at the moment, I can send them to other filmmakers and other projects to get them rolling. So.
Actually, I could attest to that because I think I've gotten 2 gigs from a referral or a mention that you've made, and they've been like, oh, well, yeah, CJ said, you're one of the guys here in San Antonio doing audio. Are you interested? I'm like, oh, well, shit. I've never worked with CJ. I was on set with him, but I never worked with him. Man, that's badass. Cool. I need to thank him with him. So thank you. Like I said, I've gotten at least 2 referrals from you or through friends of friends within the film community here in San Antonio. So I appreciate that. I really do. And I appreciate what you're doing for filmmakers here in San Antonio because you are educating us. And I say us because I'm part of that. And you're sharing your film hustle, your film journey with us and kind of paving the way for us to kind of think outside of the creative aspect and start thinking business and hopefully becoming better filmmakers out there. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And I think I said it on other podcasts. There's a lot of great filmmakers in San Antonio, but also in just Texas. There's a lot. I'm really humbled. I'm like, look, I'm a filmmaker, but in no way am I, I think even close to being one of the best in Texas. There's a lot of great filmmakers. They just don't understand the business process.
Yeah.
And a lot of times dedication and the business side of things can outdo talent. So just because you're the most talented doesn't mean you may be the most successful. You got to learn the business side of things and get your film out there. So I really try to find those filmmakers, help them as much as I can with the knowledge and experience I know. I definitely don't know everything. The film industry changes daily. It's insane. I try to keep up, but I'm more than happy to share my knowledge and experience, and I do hope it helps the film community here in San Antonio, man. So I appreciate you having me on, David, and I'm happy to speak anytime.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, CJ, for the time that you took to speak with us. Again, guys, I'll put a link on all his socials, all his media and whatnot. If you get a chance to go check out his film, leave a good review. Don't be that damn keyboard freaking ranger. And until next time, film noobs, keep watching film, support new filmmakers, and we will see y'all. All right. And that's it for the podcast. CJ, again, thank you so much, man.